Hi everyone, my name is Dr. Sarah Yu. I'm show host Dr. Sarah Yu Show for today's America in the World, as well as Dr. Sarah Yu Show, U.S. For U.S. Senate and as well as for U.S. Congress. Today I have a really great community service to do police, all life spanning service as police as well as professor. Dr. Joel is here. Welcome, Dr. Joel.
Hi, Dr. Liew. Thank you for having me on.
Great. So I'm so honored your service as police, man, as well as teaching many field of your specialty. Thank you so much for that. All the contribution in your life. Still, you are working on it, even you are retired. So thank you for that. And then I have a few questions for you, and you just answer because our audience, want to know specific area of your field. Okay. So tell me, first question is who are you?
Well, I'm just a country boy from the Ozarks in Missouri, and started my police career there and finished my, well, you never finish one's education, but completed my education in Missouri. But I've spent half of our family's life in the state of Colorado, where I now live. I'm retired police executive and also retired from college teaching, where I taught criminal justice, and also in police academies as a director and instructor. So in addition to that, I've lectured on criminal justice issues at conferences across the country over the course of my career. And now in retirement, I write and continue to do some teaching, and hope to continue to help train police officers to be better at the things that they are already doing very quite well, actually, nationwide.
Okay, so as I know, we have so many issues in police field right now, like depending uh, Republican always wants to fund more, but Democrat now wants to defund. So tell me about not only that issue, tell me about, as you know, you can be voice of the police, as you know, voice of community. So I want to know the more detailed issue, what's going on in police, academy or police field of the community service during. So tell me about what is the issues. Yeah.
Well, I've been in law enforcement actively as an instructor or as a practitioner for I think I'm in my fourth decade now. Started when I was 20 years old as a military policeman in the Army. And over these years, I have seen a continual improvement in the education level of police officers, in the way that we relate to the community, in the difference in the expectation of the community. Legislation has changed. Police officers have become much more aware of issues like domestic violence, child abuse, and human trafficking, and those kinds of issues. And so I've just seen a tremendous amount of improvement in the education, training, and performance of police officers over the last 4 decades. And right now, the profession is in a state of persecution, not just observation. You know, almost every police officer has a body-worn camera, so their activities are being constantly recorded. They're constantly recorded by people who want to take out their cell phones and record all of the interactions and all the surveillance. So police officers are highly accountable, being held accountable, and yet the profession as a whole continues to be criticized for being racist and brutal, poorly trained, and in severe need of reform. And the reality is that those misperceptions and the lack of appreciation for the level of service that most Americans are getting, not that there isn't room for improvement, there always is, but that kind of pressure on policing has resulted in massive retirements and resignations, people getting out of the business, and people not getting into law enforcement. We have a tremendous recruitment and retention problem that's leaving police agencies all across the country short-staffed, in addition to those entities who have decided that police don't need all that money, we're going to spend that on social services. And my question is, how do you think those people get into social services? Law enforcement, the criminal justice system has always been the gateway for social services, whether it's drug treatment or other types of psychological help. And so recruitment, retention, staffing, and then wellness, overall wellness, physical and mental wellness for police officers is a real issue that's being made worse by this constant pressure on policing and the bad publicity. Interestingly, most people love and appreciate their local police, but nationally there's this idea that we're brutal and racist and untrained. And so moving away from that perception and bringing the recognition of honor for the service of police officers back into the profession, so that police officers don't have to feel like they're literally under the gun, and unprovoked attacks and assaults and police officers being resisted and shot and wounded in the line of duty. Those numbers are very disturbing. And I attribute that a lot to, not to people who want to do the best they can for the public in terms of offering quality policing services. We're all in favor of that. But those that just want to continue to critique and bash and present narratives of police encounters that are factually incorrect. So the perception by the public of the police and of the police toward the public during this time of post-Ferguson and post-George Floyd have presented problems that are resulting in people leaving the profession, not coming into the profession, and short staffing. So again, the citizens are the ones that get hurt. And in those places where there has been a defunding or a diversion of funding or a lack of support for police officers, you see crime rising. When you give incentives for police officers to hunker down, stay in their car, just answer calls, do the minimum, don't risk getting shot, don't risk getting sued, don't risk getting fired or getting filmed doing something that they're required to do, but has a wicked narrative attached to it in some YouTube video, people suffer. Crime goes up, people's property is at risk, their lives are at risk. And we've seen that in city and city and city after city.
Okay, so now it's crime rate is so high, inflation high, and the homeless problem. So the many problem in the area, our community now, especially crime is involving related police, how they working, solution those. So I want to hear you have your lifetime service as police and as well as professor, police academy. So I want to know, we know everyone know about like a problem, right? So we want to now have looking for solution. So I think you can suggestion us to the solution, please. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate many states are now regretting the anti-police and defund the police and malicious reform efforts. Again, not against police reform. We need to get better. All organizations can get better. But the hypercritical attacks on law enforcement, we're now seeing the ill effects of that on society. And so we're seeing more funding being restored, more grants being restored, and even the Democrats. And we hesitate to make this a partisan issue, but the reality is that it is the left-leaning Democrats that have been anti-police, even though President Biden says that he's pro-police and pro-community policing. What we see is leftover from the Obama era, and Obama was very unsupportive of police and very critical of police. You remember the incident with the Harvard professor, the officers were investigating a possible break-in of his home. Turned out that it was just him and he'd forgotten his keys. And they did exactly what they're supposed to do, ask for identification, make sure the property and the people are all safe. But President Obama said that the police were acting stupidly. That was just a knee-jerk reaction out of ignorance of what the police do and what their responsibilities and procedures are. And all of the attention that was given to the criminal element that were involved in high-profile events like Darren Wilson, Officer Darren Wilson's use of justifiable deadly force against Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri, that resulted in riots. I was there in reporting on that for a police publication. And all of this attention was given to poor Michael Brown and poor Michael Brown's family. And even after multiple investigations, multiple autopsies, forensic evidence, grand jury investigation, that event, first of all, the hands up, don't shoot was completely mythology, never happened. And secondly, Officer Wilson was completely legally and morally justified in doing what he did, given the circumstances of Michael Brown's attack on him and attempt to get his weapon after having committed a strong arm robbery. And pushing a shop owner around so he could steal some cigars. And that narrative has been the basis for police reform. So in those, I don't want to stray too far, but in those areas where that narrative, that anti-police narrative, wrong, not fact-based, mythological narrative of police abuse has been embraced, you've seen, as I said, crime go up, property crime and violent crime. So now we're seeing some backlash from that and some backpedaling, and the Democrats are being blamed for the increase in crime. And I think that's blame that is well put. And so now they are bragging about this bipartisan police funding proposal that's, I think, working its way through Congress right now. So increased funding is one of the solutions to the problems. Why do we need more police funding now? Because there's more demands for evidence gathering. There's more demands for comprehensive investigations. There's more demands for police training in social service areas. There is higher accountability for police officers. There are many more laws, more responsibilities that have been laid on police officers. And for example, in the Eric Garner case, which is a in custody death that occurred in New York City, I think in 2017, maybe some years ago. I know it was George Floyd, where he was allegedly killed by police officers making an arrest. Well, those police officers were out there, designated armed government agents to enforce cigarette taxes. And Mr. Garner was selling untaxed cigarettes and was the target of an investigation. Untaxed cigarettes, along with other vice issues, are often associated with organized crime. So, you know, we say things like, oh, George Floyd shouldn't have been arrested because he was just passing fake $20 bills, and Eric Garner shouldn't have been arrested. He was only selling untaxed cigarettes. And Michael Brown was only jaywalking when he was contacted by the police. That kind of false narrative completely ignores the dangerous realities that police officers face when they confront folks. But if we're going to say we need an armed government agent to enforce helmet laws, or an armed government agent to enforce insurance coverage for vehicles, or armed government agents to stop people from selling untaxed cigarettes, you have to accept the realities of law enforcement that go along with that. So in addition to funding, because we have so many more responsibilities now, we also
Okay,
need to examine.
yeah, I understand all those solutions, but can you tell me more about, because we funded to police, right? So you're a professor. So that means we pay more tax, is a tax increase. All the funding to coming from the, you know, our citizens pay tax. So because of those balancing, we needed to management. So as I know, we have so many grant programs. So can you sell to, because not only those fund from taxpayer, as you said, we sell those grant program. Can you tell me more like grant program to any grant program for the we can using? Yeah.
Well, historically, since the 1970s, based on a 1960s presidential study, we've had special funding to support police training and education. And then that was during the Johnson administration. And then during the Reagan administration, we had funding for drug enforcement. And then during the Clinton administration, we had funding for community policing. And during the Bush administration, we had funding for anti-terrorism. And now the proposals are funding again for training about responding to mental health issues and reinvesting in community policing. But all of those things boil down to more cars, better equipment, better training, more staffing, and those kind of very fundamental issues. And so when local communities, which is where the primary responsibility lay, when local communities at least maintain levels of funding and recognize the strains on the system, then that can go a long way funding the police. My concern with federal funding, we'll take the money, but my concern with federal funding is, okay, we'll give you these dollars if you do this kind of training, hire these kinds of officers. And so there are so many strings attached that sometimes that funding really isn't worth it, because you have to jump through some hoops that make the politicians happy, but don't necessarily serve the public, if that makes sense.
Great, great. This is very important information. And can you share any story about your during your policing or during your teaching? So tell me your own story to solution or relate only solve problem. Yeah.
Well, in the departments that I've managed, and I've been police chief in 3 different agencies, and worked for a number of agencies, and I've done observational studies with over 50 agencies across the country, from New York City to LA and Chicago to Albuquerque, all places in between. What we need to do is manage mission creep for policing. So if we have a community that says, we want you to round up our stray dogs, we want you to unlock our cars when we lock our keys in, we want you to come lecture our 8-year-olds when they won't take a bath, that takes a lot of time. And so if we can say, okay, public, you don't think we can handle mental health crises, then don't call us, call social services. So just keep us out of the loop. If you don't want us to investigate, you don't want us to make traffic stops, then okay, we'll stop doing traffic stops. So we can cut down our responsibilities and keep the core responsibilities of responding to property and violent crime. And so police agencies sometimes have to make that decision on their own and say, I'm sorry, I can't handle your call. Or we get a less expensive community service officer, non-law enforcement officer, who will say, okay, well, we'll take your report over the phone, or we'll send somebody out to take your information. And then if it meets the criteria, if we have evidence, if it's serious enough, then we'll assign an actual police officer to investigate and follow up. So filtering the kind of calls that we have and having an alternative service delivery are a couple of ways that we can cut down on costs when funding is constrained. So those are some of the solutions that I have imposed, and being very involved with the community so that they understand, when should I call the police? When can I handle things on my own? What is a police matter? What are other agencies that can handle things? And so that helps police officers be able to focus on criminal activity rather than try to solve all the problems all over the world.
Okay, my personal, I wanna asking you to how we can as you are police, as professor of a police academy, I want to hear that how we can best treat homeless problem as your public service or policeman. Yeah.
I wish I had a solution to that, doctor. I don't. Um, the, the mental health services are overwhelmed. Many homeless people, and I know this is not politically popular to say, my sister was homeless for a couple of years until she died of AIDS. She was on the streets of Baltimore. We had no idea where she went. And that was her choice. I mean, she had some mental issues, but she had a family to go to. She had a place that she could return to. We would have welcomed her with open arms as we had in the past. But it was her decision to live that lifestyle and to move away from her support system. And so if you have people that still have some level of competence and ability to make their own decisions, and they don't want help, that's that's a real challenge.
It's really, thank you so much. That it's really, school crime, so many serious. So tell me your view of school crime, school crimes, how we can solve those problems. Yeah.
Well, school is still the statistically safest place for our children. The acts of violence that make the news and chill us to our bones and hurt our heart are very rare events, and that doesn't make the deaths and injuries and trauma any less, but it's still a very safe place. Instituting behavioral intervention teams where we try to collect all the data on what's going on in the school community and the community so that we might have a heads up. Because all the research tells us that most school attackers leaked their plans somewhere. We just need to have our eyes and ears out with partners in the community to find out those things. Physical hardware, drills, those kinds of things have really minimal effect. Most of it is relational, and some of it, frankly, is just not going to be preventable. But a high degree of surveillance and a well-trained staff that is ready to lock down. You realize that there have been zero deaths of K-12 students who were behind a locked door with the attacker outside of the locked door. So inside the classroom during an attack is the safest place for kids to be. And school in general is the safest place to be. More kids are hurt and assaulted in their homes by people that have access to them than are in schools. And so I think we need to celebrate the level of safety and confidence that we have in our existing school systems, and then set up enough surveillance of behaviors, of threats inside and outside to head those off and intervene before an attack occurs.
Thank you so much. Through your experience, this is really good voice of message we heard from you. Thank you so much your contribution. This is my last question. So we want to hear your 5-year goal as well as how we can reach you and what is your message, last message.
Yeah, my website is Street Smart Force. I don't know if you can see that on my shirt. It's just Street Smart Force, one word, .com, and you can get a hold of me that way. I've got a couple of books that may be of interest, some videotapes that are of interest that you can watch online. My 5-year goal is to survive for another 5 years. I'm Social Security age, and so I want to maintain my health so that I can continue to reach out and serve police officers and the public. And so if there's one message I would give is tell your cops that you appreciate them, that you appreciate their service, and keep an eye on legislation and what your local governing bodies are doing so that you can maintain an effective and quality law enforcement agency in your community.
Thank you so much, Professor Dr. Joel. Your sharing today is great, improve our community. So as well as I'm very honored your life to serve community as police, as well as teaching many students in police academy. Thank you for your join today.
It's been my honor. Thank you so much.
Thank you.